One of my favourite stories from those early days is this. After they designed the Austin 1800, they found out that it was too wide to fit in a tunnel that links the two halves of Longbridge together over this road here. So what they had to do was load them all onto trucks on this side of the road, and bear in mind they were unpainted at this stage, take them across 2 lanes of traffic, and then a quarter of a mile up there in all weathers with salt on the roads, and then through a gate just beyond the brow of the hill. That's fantastic.
You have been used by the management in the most cynical way.
Unsurprisingly, British Leyland was on a slide into oblivion, and that's before we get to the biggest problem of them all.
Where a German manager was spending 5% of his time on industrial relations, the people at British Leyland, and Ford for that matter, were spending something like 60% of their time on industrial relations.
The trade unions would have to accept some responsibility. The major responsibility was management.
The managers who were there at the time, looking back on it now, would agree that there were lots of things they should have done earlier had they known, but they didn't know.
The whole policy that was being pursued at the time, in my view, was wrong. Trade unions had no part, or indeed no authority, within that framework at all.
They were the people who made the cars. I mean, take Derek Robinson, for example. He worked in the industry all his life. And then you bring in managers who, from a business studies course, who got a degree in business management, couldn't mend a puncture in their motorbike. And then you speak about the people who made the cars as the problems.
Well, in the first half of 77, I went there on November the 7th. In the first half, there were 357 stoppages at Longbridge alone.
But strikes were exceptions rather than the rule.
In my 5 years at British Leyland, the real major crises amounted to 8. And that was 8 occasions when the whole business stood a very serious chance of coming to a total end.
Still, there was always the good old Mini. Through it all, this 10-foot symbol of Englishness just went on and on and on. But even it had problems. When it was first launched, wearing a price tag of £497, Ford bought one and took it apart, desperate to find out how on earth their rivals at BMC were doing it for the money. It took them a while, but they got there in the end. BMC weren't doing it for the money. They were making a loss on every one they sold. And to make matters worse, they never updated it either. Everywhere else in the world, cars are replaced every 4 years or so, but not in Britain. In 1979, a new government came along. And even though BL were working on a promising tie-up with Honda, Maggie's hard nuts could see only one solution: sell the lot. Unipart was first to go. Then Leyland trucks and buses. And amid mutterings about selling the family silver to Johnny Foreigner, Jaguar was sold to Ford. When they then suggested flogging Land Rover off to General Motors, though, the muttering became a shriek. The government backed off and sold Rover and Land Rover to British Aerospace on the strict understanding that neither would be sold on again for 5 years.
The sale of Rover, the last British-owned volume car manufacturer, to BMW by its parent company, British Aerospace, took businessmen and stock markets totally by surprise.
This was a great deal. The government could say we didn't do it. British Aerospace made over 600 million quid, and Rover at last and a secure future.
You're saying there's nothing to fear from it?
I think there is no reason for fear because I see more chances for the new group, Rover and BMW, than for each of us alone.
Rover's to be broken up. The question is, what happens next? At BMW's Munich HQ, the board will reach a verdict soon. Here, thousands of workers at Rover Longbridge await their fate.
This is BMW's legacy, the Rover 75. Not a bad car, but in its early life, a serious problem for air traffic controllers. You never saw one on the roads, but the airfields were full of them. And whose fault was this? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you BMW. They obviously went to a traditional English pub and thought, the English, they are liking the low ceilings, the wood, the leather. And we are noticing the fruit machine in the corner, so we will have the flashing lights on the dashboard, yeah? This is very British. Of course it is, in the same way that all Germans wear leather shorts and green hats. Fitting these cream dials and this Tudor Beetham wood to make it British is like fitting an onion holder to the dashboard of a Renault to make it French. It's stupid. So, here we are in the dining room, and in the best traditions of Agatha Christie, I must now decide who it was that killed the British car industry. Was it Len Lord, the man who brought it all together? Or Tony Benn, the man who nationalised it? Was it the trade unions, or Maggie's Hardnuts, or the spell under foreign ownership? Well, after long and careful consideration, I have decided it was all of them. Good night.